Tonight, we're traveling back over 50,000 years, a time long before agriculture, before cities, before written language. We're entering the Paleolithic period, also called the Old Stone Age, the longest phase of human existence. During this period, modern humans, Homo sapiens, lived entirely as hunter-gatherers. Food came from wild plants, nuts, fruits, roots, and animals. Every day was spent tracking animals, foraging for edible plants, and making sure there was enough food for survival. Most groups were small, typically between 20 to 50 people. Anthropologists believe these group sizes were shaped by what S called Dunbar S number, the maximum number of stable relationships a human brain can manage. In small groups, everyone could know one another, share resources, and coordinate tasks. Their homes were not permanent. Instead, early humans moved constantly, following the herds of animals and seasonal cycles of plants. If food supplies ran low or danger appeared, the group could quickly relocate. The temporary camps were simple. They might consist of basic shelters made from sticks, leaves, animal hides, or caves when available. One of the most important features of any camp was the fire. Mastery of fire was one of humanity's most important evolutionary steps. Evidence shows that humans controlled fire at least 400,000 years ago. Some studies suggest it could have been mastered over 1 million years ago by earlier human species like Homo erectus. Fire provided multiple benefits. First, it made dangerous raw foods edible, safer, and easier to digest. Cooked food releases more calories than raw food. This additional energy supported the growth of our large brains, which require a surprising amount of fuel, roughly 20% of your body's energy at rest. Fire also offered protection. Many predators fear firelight. Lions, leopards, and hyenas, common threats to early humans, were less likely to approach a burning camp. Fire also created warmth during cold nights and allowed early humans to migrate into colder climates. Preserving fire overnight was critical. Most groups didn't start fresh fires each morning. Instead, they banked hot coals under ashes to insulate them and keep embers alive until morning. Around the fire, people gathered each night. It was a place for eating, crafting, talking, and teaching. This may be the birthplace of human culture. Before written language, information was passed orally. Storytelling allowed adults to share hunting strategies, edible plant knowledge, and dangerous animal encounters with younger generations. Some scientists suggest that these early oral traditions served as a survival mechanism. A story about a dangerous predator or poisonous plant was far more memorable than a simple warning. As darkness fell, the camp would settle into its sleeping pattern. Early humans rarely slept in complete silence or total darkness. In fact, modern studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania reveal that someone is almost always awake throughout the night, even if unintentionally. Sleep cycles overlapped naturally. This created what some scientists call a sentinel effect, reducing the chance of the entire group being vulnerable to nocturnal predators at once. In modern times, many people find comfort sleeping next to partners or pets. This behavior may be rooted in these ancient survival instincts, feeling safer in numbers while sleeping. The shelters were arranged closely together, sometimes in loose circles or semicircles, making it easier to spot approaching threats. The camp layout itself was part of their defensive strategy. Nights were not completely silent. Insects buzzed in the grass, nocturnal animals moved nearby, owls called from the trees. Occasionally the howls of wolves or hyenas echoed across the open plains, but the firelight provided a protective boundary. The flickering glow marked the center of safety, keeping both animals and fear at a distance. Even without artificial lights or permanent homes, early humans were remarkably well adapted to this life. Their senses were attuned to nature's signals. They could hear distant rustling in the grass, smell approaching predators, Read animal tracks and signs left in the dirt. As you imagine lying beneath this prehistoric sky, you can picture the soft warmth of animal skins beneath your body. The ground firm, but comforting beneath you. Above, the stars shine bright without modern light pollution. In fact, early humans likely saw thousands more stars than most people can see today. Some of these ancient people used the stars to navigate, predict seasons, and even develop early mythologies, constellations that told stories about the animals they hunted and the dangers they faced. As your breathing slows, you begin to settle into this simple ancient rhythm, a rhythm that our species followed for tens of thousands of years. Surviving together, sleeping in groups, sharing knowledge by firelight, always watching the sky, always adapting to nature's ever-changing rules. Tonight, you rest under the same stars that watched over them, and like them, you are safe within the protection of your group, your ancestors, and the wisdom passed down across uncountable generations. The first light of dawn begins to glow on the horizon. Slowly, the pale blue sky brightens, streaked with soft pink and orange. In the Stone Age, there were no alarm clocks, but there were natural signals, the shift in light, the cooling air before sunrise, the faint calls of birds beginning their morning songs. Early humans woke with these rhythms. The rising sun signaled both safety and opportunity. Many predators hunted under cover of darkness, but with daylight came lower risk. Within the camp, the first stirrings begin. Some individuals wake slowly, stretching under their animal skin coverings. Others check the fire, carefully uncovering the buried embers, kept alive under ash through the night. The embers glow faintly, ready to be coaxed back to life. Fire was rarely started from scratch each morning. Starting a fire by friction or striking stones took time, effort, and skill. Preserving embers overnight was a simple yet crucial technique. A few dry sticks are added to the embers. The hunter blows softly, feeding oxygen to the coals. Soon, flames flicker once again. Maintaining fire was often one person's responsibility in the group. This task may have been one of the earliest forms of designated labor in human groups, an early example of division of roles. Nearby, water is collected from the closest river or stream. Even during the Paleolithic, early humans had basic water management knowledge. They selected clean sources whenever possible and avoided stagnant pools where bacteria or parasites might live. Some anthropologists suggest that groups living near reliable water sources may have had greater stability, reducing the constant need to move and allowing more complex social structures to develop. Food preparation begins immediately. The evening before, some of the hunted meat was preserved by drying or smoking, but most food had to be eaten quickly. Without refrigeration, fresh meat spoiled within a day or two. Early humans likely consumed far more of the animal than we do today. Organs, marrow, and fat were highly prized sources of nutrition. Marrow inside bones was broken open with stone tools to extract its rich, fatty contents. Fat was critical in these diets, providing energy far more efficiently than carbohydrates alone. Interestingly, many scientists believe that access to high-quality animal fats and proteins contributed to rapid brain expansion during human evolution. While some prepare the morning meal, others check the camp's surroundings. Early humans were highly attuned to small signs in their environment. Tracks left in soft soil overnight might reveal the presence of deer, wild boar, or predators. Changes in bird activity could signal danger or opportunities. Even the movement of insects could give clues about weather changes or nearby water. This constant observation wasn't a special skill. It was survival instinct, deeply ingrained over thousands of generations. As more of the group awakens, daily roles naturally divide. In many Paleolithic groups, both men and women participated in food gathering and preparation. The old stereotype that men exclusively hunted while women gathered is now considered oversimplified. Modern research shows that hunting roles were likely flexible, with both sexes participating depending on age, skill, health, and opportunity. Foraging for plants, fruits, and roots was equally important. Anthropologists estimate that for many hunter-gatherer groups, plant-based foods provided 60 to 80% of daily calories. Skilled foragers recognized hundreds of edible species: roots, tubers, nuts, berries, wild onions, and leafy greens. Some plants had medicinal properties. Archaeological studies have found pollen from medicinal plants at Neanderthal burial sites, suggesting early use of natural remedies. The group's elders often held this knowledge, passing it down orally through demonstration and repetition. Mistaking one plant for another could mean illness or death. This expertise was critical. Nearby, young children watched carefully. In the Paleolithic world, education was entirely hands-on. Children learned directly by observing adults, how to track footprints, how to sharpen stone tools, how to distinguish safe plants from poisonous ones. There were no classrooms, but every moment was a lesson. Older members of the group, grandparents or great-grandparents, played important social roles. The grandmother hypothesis suggests that having longer-living elders allowed humans to share knowledge across generations and care for grandchildren, giving young mothers more time to gather food. This extended lifespan and intergenerational support may have been a key factor in human evolutionary success. Meanwhile, tools are prepared for the day's hunt. Flint knives are inspected, wooden spears are sharpened. Stone tools from the Paleolithic were sophisticated for their time. Some types, like Acheulean hand axes, remained virtually unchanged for over 1 million years due to their efficiency. Tool-making wasn't random. It required forethought. Selecting the right type of stone, understanding fracture patterns, applying force at precise angles. This level of planning may have helped develop complex problem-solving skills in the human brain. As preparations continue, group members quietly discuss the day's plan, where the animals were last seen, which direction to follow, which plants are in season. Coordination was key. Cooperation and communication are hallmarks of human survival, far more so than raw strength or speed. The sun now rises fully over the horizon. Light floods the open plain. The insects buzz softly in the warming air. Birds soar overhead, scanning for insects and small prey. The tribe is ready. The day's work begins. Survival depends not on luck, but on the careful preparation, cooperation, and knowledge shared each morning, as it has been for tens of thousands of years. The morning preparations are complete. Now comes one of the most crucial parts of prehistoric survival, the hunt. For early humans, hunting was both a skill and a risk. The rewards were high: meat, fat, marrow, hides, bones, and sinew. But the dangers were real. Paleolithic hunters did not have metal weapons or long-range firearms. Their tools were primarily made from sharpened stone, wood, and sometimes bone. Spears, throwing sticks, atlatls, or spear throwers, and traps were their main hunting technologies. The atlatl, invented around 20,000 years ago, allowed hunters to throw spears with greater force and distance, increasing both safety and success. The hunting party leaves the camp, moving in small groups. They travel lightly, carrying only what they need: sharpened spears, knives, water, and perhaps basic fire-starting materials. The hunters move slowly, scanning the environment. They are experts at reading subtle signs: a broken branch, fresh droppings, tracks in the soft dirt, flattened grass where an animal rested the night before. Their eyes constantly shift, watching for movement, shapes, or sounds that betray nearby animals. Early humans often hunted medium to large animals: antelope, wild horses, bison, elk, wild pigs, and, at times, dangerous megafauna like mammoths or giant sloths. The choice of prey depended on the region, climate, and available species. Modern research suggests that early humans sometimes worked together with highly coordinated tactics to bring down much larger animals. Cooperative hunting was a uniquely human strength. Unlike most predators, humans lacked natural weapons like claws or powerful jaws, but they compensated with planning, communication, and teamwork. This cooperation may have helped shape the evolution of human language itself. As the hunters move forward, they stay downwind whenever possible, preventing their scent from alerting prey. Their movements are quiet, deliberate. Prey animals have evolved sharp senses. One misstep, one snapped twig, can send an entire herd fleeing. Once animals are located, the strategy depends on species and conditions. Some hunts involved stalking, moving in slowly, using cover to get within striking distance for a thrown spear. Others involved ambushes, herding animals into traps or narrow spaces where escape routes were limited. In certain situations, early humans employed a remarkable strategy known as persistence hunting. In persistence hunting, small groups would chase animals over long distances in the heat of the day. Most prey animals can sprint quickly, but they overheat if forced to run for long periods. Humans, with their ability to sweat and regulate body temperature, could jog for hours, slowly exhausting prey. After many miles, a fatigued animal would finally collapse, unable to continue. Persistence hunting is still practiced today by certain modern hunter-gatherer groups, like the San people of the Kalahari Desert. This method required enormous endurance, knowledge of animal behavior, and intimate understanding of the terrain. Once prey was taken down, the work of butchering began. Early humans utilized almost every part of the animal. The meat provided food. The hide became clothing, shelter, or cordage. Bones were shaped into tools, weapons, or sewing needles. Tendons became strong sinew for binding and construction. Even the brain tissue was sometimes used in tanning hides. Few parts were wasted. The value of a successful hunt extended beyond calories. It supported every aspect of survival. Large kills were often shared throughout the group. This sharing created strong social bonds. Individuals who shared food gained trust, status, and future reciprocity. Sharing reinforced cooperation and strengthened group survival, another key reason humans thrive as highly social animals. But not every hunt was successful. Many days, hunters returned empty-handed. Failure meant the group would lean more heavily on gathered plant foods, small game, or fish, if nearby water sources allowed. Flexibility in diet is one of the reasons Homo sapiens were able to spread into nearly every corner of the globe. In colder climates, meat-heavy diets were essential. In tropical areas, a greater variety of plant foods filled the diet. These varied skills, hunting, gathering, fishing, allowed early humans to adapt to environments as diverse as African savannas, Siberian tundra, dense European forests, and tropical islands. Back in the present hunt, as the day warms, the sun climbs higher. The hunters scan the horizon carefully for distant movement. Birds circling may signal a wounded or dead animal nearby. Predator tracks may suggest dangerous competition. Large carnivores like lions, leopards, wolves, and hyenas also hunted these same animals, and sometimes even hunted humans themselves. Competition for prey was constant. Early humans not only competed with animals, but sometimes with rival human groups over the same hunting grounds. Fossil records show signs of intergroup conflict, including healed skull fractures and spear injuries. But conflict wasn't constant. Groups sometimes cooperated or traded with one another. Early forms of exchange may have helped spread tools, knowledge, and even early languages across regions. As the afternoon heat rises, the hunting party decides to return to camp. Whether successful or not, information gathered during the hunt, tracks found, animals spotted, new waterholes, helps guide future decisions. The return journey is slow and steady. The wide plains stretch endlessly before them. The camp, smoke from its central fire rising faintly, waits in the distance. And another day of survival, built on observation, strategy, and ancient cooperation, draws closer to its end. Hunting was never the only way early humans survived. In fact, for much of human history, gathering plants, fruits, nuts, and roots provided the majority of daily calories. Many modern hunter-gatherer societies still obtain up to 70 or 80% of their food from gathering, with hunting providing valuable protein, fats, and specific nutrients when possible. This means that for tens of thousands of years, much of humanity's survival depended not on hunting animals, but on carefully understanding plants. As the sun continues to climb in the late morning, another group departs from camp, the gatherers. Typically, this group consists of women, children, and elders, though these roles were never rigid. Gathering required expert knowledge. Which plants were edible? Which were poisonous? Which were ready to harvest? Which held medicine? This knowledge was often passed down through generations. Young children learned to recognize useful plants by following older family members day after day, season after season. The forest edge and open grasslands were both rich with resources if you knew where to look. The group moved slowly, scanning the ground and the trees, reading the land like a living book. In the trees above, clusters of wild fruits grow, berries, figs, or persimmons depending on the region. Many wild fruits are smaller than their modern cultivated versions, but they still offer valuable sugars, fibers, and vitamins. On the forest floor, they search for roots and tubers. Starchy plants like yams, wild onions, or cattails provided dense calories. Digging sticks, simple wooden poles sharpened at one end, were used to loosen the earth carefully without damaging the food beneath. Tubers are important because they store energy underground, safe from droughts, fires, or grazing animals. This stability allowed human groups to return to familiar patches year after year, sometimes even replanting parts for the next season, an early step toward the eventual rise of farming. Other plants offered proteins through nuts and seeds. Acorns, walnuts, hazelnuts, and pine nuts were commonly collected where available. Many nuts require preparation. Some contain bitter compounds called tannins that had to be leached out through soaking and rinsing. This knowledge was essential for safe consumption. Nearby, children practice mimicking their mothers and grandmothers. They learn how to identify toxic plants by sight, smell, or even the shape of leaves and flowers. Bright colors often signal danger, warning of alkaloids or cyanogenic compounds that can sicken or kill if eaten. Plant knowledge wasn't simply about calories. It was also medicinal. Archaeological evidence from Neanderthal sites shows remains of medicinal plants like yarrow and chamomile, suggesting even our distant relatives recognized healing properties. Some plants eased pain, others treated digestive issues. Certain herbs acted as antiseptics for wounds. This ancient botanical wisdom formed the foundation of much of traditional medicine that would emerge millennia later. Beyond food and medicine, plants provided materials. Fibers were stripped from grasses and bark to make rope, baskets, and nets. Some plants produced dyes for decorating hides or bodies, possibly even for early artistic expression or ritual use. The gathering group constantly watches the sky and listens to the wind as they move. They remain aware of the ever-present dangers: venomous snakes hiding beneath bushes, large cats stalking from afar, insects carrying painful stings or dangerous disease. Even today, people who live closely with nature develop an acute awareness of their surroundings, hearing small shifts in bird calls or recognizing scents that signal nearby animals. As they walk, the gatherers often return to familiar foraging areas. These are seasonal routes, remembered year after year, following the blooming of certain flowers or the ripening of specific trees. Knowledge of the land's seasonal rhythm allowed hunter-gatherer bands to time their migrations. The seasons shaped not only their diet, but their movements, social gatherings, and even birth cycles, as periods of food abundance made raising children easier. Occasionally, honey is found, one of the most calorie-rich foods available. In some modern hunter-gatherer societies, honey can account for up to 15% of caloric intake when accessible. But obtaining it carries risks. Bees defend their nests fiercely. Ancient people likely used smoke to calm bees and long sticks or ladders to reach hives hidden in cliffs or tall trees. Honey provided not just sugar, but also antibacterial properties, useful for wound care. By midday, the gathering baskets are full. Bundles of roots, clusters of berries, woven bags heavy with nuts and seeds, medicinal leaves tied carefully with grasses. The group turns back toward camp, their steps careful but steady. The afternoon heat rises, insects buzz louder and small birds chatter in the trees above. In total, a single gathering trip might cover several miles and require intimate knowledge of dozens or even hundreds of plant species. This was not casual knowledge. It was specialized, detailed, memorized from childhood, and constantly updated with new discoveries and cautionary mistakes. The ability to find, identify, process, and safely consume wild plants was one of the most essential skills for prehistoric survival. And it's a skill that allowed humans to thrive in environments across the globe, from deserts and jungles to mountains and tundra. As they return to camp, the gathered food will now be prepared. Roots roasted, nuts cracked open, leaves dried for medicine. The work of gathering never truly ended, but it sustained human life long before farms or markets ever existed. As the sun reaches its highest point, the harshest heat of the day begins. By now, both the hunters and gatherers have returned to camp. For early humans, the middle of the day was a time of slower activity. Unlike modern societies that often continue working through the afternoon, many prehistoric people adapted to nature's natural rhythm, resting when the sun was most intense and conserving energy for later. Within the camp, small groups gather in the shade of trees or shelters made from branches and hides. The fire remains alive but burns low. Thin smoke rises into the still, dry air. Around the fire, tasks that require careful hands and close attention continue quietly. This was often the time for tool making and maintenance. Early humans developed surprisingly sophisticated stone tools. One of the most important was the flint knapping technique, a controlled method of chipping stone to create sharp blades and cutting edges. Mastery of flint knapping required precise knowledge of stone properties, the right type of rock, such as flint, chert, or obsidian, the proper angle of impact, the correct amount of force to remove flakes without shattering the tool. Archaeologists have found beautifully made hand axes and blades dating back hundreds of thousands of years. Some stone tool designs remained largely unchanged for over 1 million years because they were so effective. Other tasks also took place during these calm hours. Animal hides were cleaned, softened, and stretched. These hides provided not only clothing, but also bedding carrying bags, shelter coverings, and rope. Tanning hides often involved soaking skins in water, scraping off remaining flesh, and applying natural oils or animal brains to help soften the material, a labor-intensive but essential process. While some worked, others cared for the children. In hunter-gatherer groups, child-rearing was often shared among the entire community. Mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and older siblings cooperated to raise young children. This system of cooperative breeding may have played an important role in human evolution by allowing mothers to have more children closer together in age. As the children grow, they participate in small ways. They practice gathering small items, mimic adults sharpening sticks, learn to identify plants and animals. Every day is part of their education. Formal teaching didn't exist, but learning happened constantly through experience and observation. In some shaded corners of the camp, individuals work with plant fibers, twisting, braiding, and weaving. Simple ropes and nets were critical tools. Rope allowed for carrying bundles of food or water. Nets made it possible to trap small game or fish. Some researchers believe that the ability to create and use woven materials may have predated pottery, making textiles one of the oldest technologies in human history. Meanwhile, conversations continue. These were not idle talks, but essential forms of communication. Group members exchanged information about where animals were spotted, which plants were in season, and any new dangers observed. Cooperation and information sharing improved everyone's chances of survival. Language itself may have emerged from this need to coordinate and share increasingly complex information. Anthropologists believe that the development of full speech in modern humans was a gradual process. But by this period, early Homo sapiens likely had sophisticated language, capable of storytelling, planning, and teaching. Storytelling was especially important. Around midday fires, elders shared stories that preserved group knowledge. Where herds migrated, which plants could heal, the dangers of certain animals or rival groups. These oral traditions were survival guides disguised as entertainment, easy for children to remember and repeat. Across the camp, others may sit quietly in thought or rest with eyes half closed. Rest wasn't laziness, it was strategy. Preserving energy during the hottest part of the day allowed for more effective hunting or gathering later when temperatures cooled. Some anthropologists compare this daily rhythm to modern hunter-gatherer societies that also rest heavily during midday, focusing activity around dawn and dusk. In some regions, cooperative trade or interaction with neighboring groups may also happen at midday. Prehistoric people occasionally encountered other bands, and some groups likely exchanged tools, food, or mating partners to strengthen genetic diversity and social alliances. While conflicts occurred, peaceful exchanges were often mutually beneficial. The ability to form alliances likely contributed to humanity's global success, as no single family group could survive alone indefinitely. The camp remains a calm but busy place through the hottest hours. The wind shifts gently through the tall grass. Insects buzz steadily in the warmth. The distant calls of birds echo softly from the trees. And slowly, as the sun begins its descent, the pace of life begins to shift once more, preparing for the evening tasks ahead. As the afternoon fades, the light begins to soften. The long shadows stretch across the camp. The sun lowers toward the horizon, signaling the end of another day. In the prehistoric world, evening was more than rest. It was when one of humanity's oldest traditions came alive: storytelling, art, and ritual. Around the central fire, the members of the group slowly gather. Some sit cross-legged. Others lie on their sides, resting on furs and woven mats. The fire crackles softly, its orange glow lighting the faces gathered in a circle, just as it had for countless generations before. Storytelling was far more than entertainment. In a world without writing, stories carried vital knowledge. They taught hunting strategies, described dangerous animals, passed down medicinal plant knowledge, warned of enemy tribes or past conflicts. But beyond practical survival, storytelling served a deeper purpose. It helped humans make sense of a world filled with mystery. The rising sun, the changing seasons, the movements of animals, the flickering stars overhead, all these became woven into early myths and beliefs. Prehistoric people were the first to ask why. Why do the animals migrate? Why does lightning strike? Where do we go when we die? And in answering these questions, they laid the foundation for religion, philosophy, and culture. Anthropologists call this symbolic thinking, the ability to attach meaning to objects, actions, and stories. This ability separates modern humans from all other species. Evidence suggests symbolic thinking was present in humans at least 100,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. We see early examples in the world's oldest cave art. In places like Chauvet Cave in France and El Castillo Cave in Spain, Handprints, animals, dots, and geometric patterns were painted on walls over 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. These images show that early humans were not simply surviving, they were expressing ideas, emotions, and beliefs through visual symbols. Many cave paintings depict animals, bison, horses, mammoths, lions. These images may have served multiple purposes: honoring the animals they hunted, asking for success in future hunts, teaching younger generations about animal behavior, or perhaps recording important events for the group. In some caves, natural rock shapes seem to have guided the artists, using bumps or cracks in the walls to bring animals to life. This shows not only creativity, but a sophisticated sense of observation and design. Painting inside caves required tools and preparation. Natural pigments were gathered from minerals: red ochre, iron oxide, charcoal for black, manganese for purples, clay for yellow and brown. These minerals were ground into powders, mixed with water, animal fat, or plant sap, and applied using fingers, brushes made from fur, or hollow bones to spray paint onto the walls. The artists worked deep inside dark caves, far from daylight. They carried torches or small stone lamps fueled by animal fat to illuminate their work. This act of creating art in total darkness suggests a deliberate, almost sacred process. Prehistoric art was not limited to caves. Small carved figurines have been found across Europe and Asia, some over 30,000 years old. The Venus figurines are some of the most famous, small statues of women with exaggerated features. Their purpose remains debated. They may have represented fertility, health, or goddess-like figures. Whatever their meaning, these figurines reveal the earliest forms of symbolic and ritual thinking. Beyond art, ritual likely played an important role in group bonding. Shared songs, dances, or ceremonies may have helped maintain social harmony. Early forms of music existed long before written language. Archaeologists have found bone flutes over 40,000 years old, some made from vulture wing bones or mammoth ivory. These flutes could produce scales similar to modern music, suggesting early humans shared not only rhythm, but melody. Singing, humming, clapping, and drumming likely filled many evenings by the fire. Music may have served to calm children, strengthen group cohesion, and provide emotional release after the struggles of daily survival. As the stories end, the group falls gradually into silence. The flames continue their slow dance. Sparks rise into the night sky, joining the countless stars above. These stars were not just distant lights to prehistoric people. They were teachers, guides, and reminders of the vastness of the world. Some early cultures may have tracked star patterns to guide migrations or predict seasonal changes. This connection to the sky likely fueled early cosmologies. Attempts to explain the universe's origin, the afterlife, and humanity's place within it. The camp quiets completely as sleep approaches. Even in sleep, the group's safety depends on shared awareness. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers show that nighttime wakefulness overlaps naturally. While some sleep, others stir lightly, ensuring that someone is always half awake, ready to respond to danger. This sentinel effect is deeply ingrained, a living memory from tens of thousands of years of human evolution. And so, the day ends. Another successful day of survival, hunting, gathering, crafting, teaching, sharing stories, watching the sky, all under the same stars that watched over every generation of our ancestors before us. And beneath those stars, as your breath slows and your body grows heavy, you too drift into the ancient rhythm of rest, connected to those who lived, loved, and dreamed long before history began. As day after day passed in the lives of prehistoric people, one skill remained at the center of almost every part of survival: the ability to make tools. Tools were the first true technology. Long before farming, long before writing or wheels, early humans were shaping the raw materials around them, turning stone, wood, bone, and plant fibers into devices that expanded their abilities. The oldest stone tools discovered date back nearly 3.3 million years, long before modern humans existed. These first tools were likely made by Australopithecus species, distant ancestors of Homo sapiens. Over hundreds of thousands of years, these early tools became more refined. By the time modern humans fully emerged, around 300,000 years ago, tool-making had reached an impressive level of sophistication. Let's begin with stone knapping, one of the most fundamental technologies of prehistory. Using a hard hammerstone or antler baton, early humans would strike a carefully chosen core of flint, chert, or obsidian, stones that fractured predictably when hit. With precise, practiced blows, they removed sharp flakes that could serve as blades, scrapers, or spear tips. These were not random strikes. Skilled knappers understood how each piece of stone would fracture based on where and how they applied force. Entire toolkits were produced, scrapers for preparing hides, burins for engraving wood and bone, awls for piercing leather, projectile points for hunting. The famous Acheulean hand axe, first appearing around 1.76 million years ago, remained in use for more than 1 million years, a testament to its effectiveness. Later cultures, such as those of the Upper Paleolithic, refined these tools into much smaller, sharper bladelets, expanding their versatility. Beyond stone, humans used bone, ivory, antler, and wood. Bone tools allowed for finer work: sewing needles, fishhooks, harpoons, and decorative beads. Needles, in particular, revolutionized clothing production, allowing fitted garments to be sewn for colder climates. A major factor enabling humans to survive in Ice Age environments. Some groups crafted composite tools, weapons and devices made from multiple materials combined. A stone blade attached to a wooden shaft, secured by animal sinew or plant fiber cordage, and sometimes glued with resins or pitch, forming early spears, knives, and axes. The adhesives themselves were technological achievements. Early humans learned how to heat tree resins and mix them with powdered minerals or charcoal to create strong glues. This allowed complex construction long before metalworking existed. Rope and cordage were equally critical. Early humans twisted plant fibers from grasses, bark, and vines into strong, flexible ropes. Rope enabled carrying heavy loads, constructing shelters, trapping animals, fishing, and even climbing. And some researchers argue that the invention of rope was as transformative as the invention of fire. Speaking of shelters, while many groups used caves when available, most built portable shelters from wood frames, animal skins, and grasses. These structures could be assembled, disassembled, and moved as needed. In colder regions, mammoth bones formed the frames of large circular dwellings, covered with hides and grasses for insulation. Such homes have been found dating back more than 20,000 years. Early humans also developed storage technology, carrying baskets woven from plant fibers, and containers made from hollowed-out gourds, shells, or even animal stomachs, allowing food and water to be transported and preserved. In some regions, early pottery appeared late in the Paleolithic period, long before agriculture. One of the oldest examples found in China dates back over 20,000 years. Fragile clay vessels fired over open flames, perhaps used for boiling food or storing liquids. Even fishing technologies were surprisingly advanced. Nets, fishhooks carved from bone, and fish weirs, fence-like structures built across rivers, allowed groups to harvest fish efficiently, providing rich protein sources. Early navigation technologies emerged as well. Simple rafts or dugout canoes allowed humans to cross rivers and lakes, and even short ocean distances, contributing to the spread of human populations across islands and coastal regions. One of humanity's greatest technological achievements of all was fire control. The ability to reliably produce fire, rather than simply preserve it, may have originated with friction-based fire-starting techniques. Tools like the fire drill, a stick rotated quickly in a groove using a bow, produced heat through friction, igniting tinder. Fire provided warmth, protection, cooking, tool-making, heat and light for working after dark. It even allowed early humans to harden wooden spear tips, making them more durable for hunting. Across these countless small inventions, stone blades, needles, ropes, fire drills, we see one unbroken thread: the constant human drive to solve problems with creativity. This inventive behavior didn't emerge suddenly. It evolved gradually through trial, error, observation, and the careful passing down of knowledge across generations. In many ways, these ancient technologies laid the foundations for everything that would follow: farming, cities, metalwork, science. Yet for hundreds of thousands of years, these simple, carefully crafted tools carried our ancestors through the harshest conditions the world could offer, allowing them to thrive across nearly every environment on Earth. As the sun sets once again and another day closes, you can picture these ancient craftsmen carefully shaping stone, twisting fiber, scraping hides, one careful movement at a time, building not only tools, but the entire human future. In the world of prehistoric humans, family and social bonds were at the very center of survival. Unlike many other animals, humans are biologically designed for prolonged care, cooperation, and close social living. Even in the most difficult environments, humans survived because of their ability to depend on one another, not just for food and protection, but for emotional support, parenting, and group cohesion. The typical prehistoric group was small, likely between 20 to 50 individuals. These bands usually consisted of multiple families who lived, hunted, and traveled together. Anthropologists believe that these groups were not strictly organized like modern nuclear families. Instead, care for children was widely shared, a system called alloparenting. Mothers cared for their own infants, but also received help from grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, and even unrelated group members. This cooperative child-rearing allowed mothers to gather food, forage, or rest, while others watched over infants and toddlers. The grandmother hypothesis proposes that one reason humans evolved such long lifespans was to allow grandmothers to continue contributing, helping feed and protect grandchildren even after their own childbearing years had ended. Few other species exhibit this pattern of long, post-reproductive life. The presence of helpful grandparents may have increased child survival rates dramatically. Prehistoric parenting began immediately after birth. Infants were kept close to the mother's body almost constantly. Skin-to-skin contact helped regulate the baby's temperature, breathing, and heartbeat, practices still recommended in modern medicine. Infants likely breastfed on demand for several years, receiving highly nutritious milk along with immune protection from the mother. As the children grew, learning was continuous. There were no formal lessons, no classrooms, no scheduled instruction. Instead, children observed every task performed by adults: how to gather plants, how to sharpen tools, how to track animals, how to avoid poisonous plants or dangerous animals. Play was also essential to learning. Young children mimicked adult activities in their games, pretending to hunt with small sticks, practicing weaving grass, building miniature shelters. Through play, they developed the physical coordination, social skills, and basic survival knowledge they would need as adults. In many modern hunter-gatherer groups, children begin contributing small amounts of food by the age of 4 or 5. By adolescence, many could already gather, hunt, and craft nearly as well as adults. The transition from childhood to adulthood was not marked by formal ceremonies in every group, but some likely practiced rites of passage. Symbolic rituals recognizing maturity and readiness for adult responsibilities. Social bonds extended beyond parenting. Pair bonding, long-term partnerships between mates, likely played a role in cooperative parenting. While early humans may not have had strict marriage customs as we understand them, stable pair bonds helped ensure survival for dependent infants. Human infants are unusually helpless compared to most mammals, requiring years of close care. Fathers often played active roles, providing food, protecting the group, teaching skills to growing children. But other adult males, uncles, brothers, or group elders, also contributed to child protection and food sharing. This flexible, cooperative system increased the survival rate of offspring dramatically. Emotional bonds ran deep. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers show that group members often share strong empathy, fairness, and mutual care for one another's well-being. In dangerous environments, individuals who failed to cooperate threatened the survival of the entire group. Group harmony was reinforced through regular sharing of food and resources. Generosity was not optional, it was expected. Individuals who hoarded food or refused to help might face social consequences, exclusion, reduced support, or even expulsion. In prehistoric life, being cut off from your group was often a death sentence. Conflict still occurred. Disagreements over resources, mating, or leadership would arise, but most disputes were likely handled through negotiation or small-scale mediation rather than constant violence. The survival of the group always came first. In some cases, larger gatherings occurred when several bands came together seasonally. These events allowed for the exchange of mates, trade goods, tools, and knowledge. They also helped maintain genetic diversity, preventing inbreeding and fostering peaceful relationships between distant groups. Even grief and mourning played an important role. Evidence from burial sites suggests that prehistoric people recognized death and honored their dead. Some graves contained carefully placed objects, tools, animal bones, shell beads, ochre pigments. These grave goods may have reflected early beliefs in an afterlife, ancestor spirits, or ongoing spiritual connections. Ritualized burial indicates not only emotional attachment, but symbolic thinking and complex social care, long before organized religion or formal rituals developed. Ultimately, prehistoric life was not just about survival of the fittest, but survival of the most cooperative. Humanity's greatest adaptation was not brute strength or sharp teeth. It was our ability to live together, share, teach, support, and form lasting bonds. And these same instincts still shape human life today. As night falls once again on the prehistoric camp, parents soothe their children, young people quietly practice their crafts, and elders hum softly by the fire, all part of a deep, ancient rhythm that has carried humanity forward for tens of thousands of years. Life in the prehistoric world was never fully safe. Even during moments of calm, while hunting, gathering, or resting by the fire, danger was always present, always near. Early humans lived completely exposed to nature's unpredictable forces. Predators, natural disasters, extreme weather, disease, injuries, and conflicts with rival groups. Every moment required awareness. Let's begin with predators, one of the constant threats faced by prehistoric people. In Africa, where modern humans first evolved, some of the most dangerous animals shared the same grasslands and forests. Lions, leopards, hyenas, crocodiles, wild dogs, giant snakes like pythons. Unlike modern humans who live behind walls and cities, early humans had no physical barriers. Even while sleeping, they remained vulnerable. The fire served as the primary defense at night. Most predators fear firelight. But during the day, traveling through tall grasses or dense forests meant constant vigilance. A sudden rustle in the bushes, the distant roar of a lion, the quick snap of branches underfoot. These sounds were never ignored. Children were watched carefully. Wander too far from camp, and even a few hundred meters could become dangerous. Early humans also faced threats from megafauna, enormous animals that roamed during the Ice Age. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats. While some of these creatures were hunted, they also posed a serious risk if provoked or surprised. A charging mammoth or rhinoceros could trample entire hunting groups. Even herbivores could be deadly if startled. Accidents and injuries were another constant threat. Without modern medicine, even small injuries could become fatal. A simple cut might become infected. A broken bone could leave someone permanently disabled. A snake bite or insect sting could turn deadly without treatment. Some prehistoric skeletons show signs of healed fractures and serious injuries, evidence that injured individuals were cared for by their groups. This caregiving behavior reflects one of humanity's strongest traits, the instinct to protect one another even when survival is difficult. Beyond predators and injuries, natural disasters shaped the landscape and survival patterns. Floods, fires, earthquakes, droughts, and volcanic eruptions regularly reshaped entire regions. A severe drought could destroy a group's food sources for months. A flash flood could wipe out an entire camp overnight. Volcanic eruptions occasionally devastated huge regions. For example, the eruption of Mount Toba in Indonesia, roughly 74,000 years ago, was one of the largest known volcanic events in human history. Some researchers believe the eruption triggered a global cooling event, potentially creating a genetic bottleneck for early human populations. Other areas saw massive glaciation during the ice ages. Glacial periods brought extreme cold, pushing humans to develop better clothing, shelter, and hunting strategies to survive. In warmer climates, wildfires sparked by lightning could sweep across dry grasslands, destroying resources and forcing migration. Weather patterns were unpredictable. Sudden storms, extreme temperature swings, and seasonal shifts demanded constant flexibility. Early humans became masters of reading the environment, recognizing wind changes, cloud patterns, animal behavior, and plant cycles to predict coming shifts. Disease also presented threats. While modern infectious diseases largely spread through large, dense populations, smaller groups still faced parasites, food poisoning, waterborne illnesses, and infections. Prehistoric people likely relied heavily on plant-based remedies to treat common illnesses, knowledge passed down through observation and experimentation over generations. But many diseases were poorly understood. Some deaths seemed mysterious, which may have contributed to early spiritual beliefs about illness, bad luck, or unseen forces. In addition to nature's dangers, humans also faced threats from other humans. As population densities slowly grew, encounters with rival groups sometimes led to violent conflict, territorial disputes, competition over hunting grounds, raids or abductions. Archaeological evidence shows healed fractures and weapon injuries in many prehistoric skeletons, scars of both interpersonal violence and group warfare. However, large-scale warfare as we know it today did not exist in the earliest periods. Violence tended to be small-scale, personal, or situational. Cooperation, trade, and alliances were often far more beneficial than constant conflict. Every risk required careful risk management. This constant exposure to danger shaped the evolution of the human brain. Our highly developed amygdala, the brain's fear center, evolved partly to manage these countless threats. Early humans had to balance caution with curiosity. The brave might find new food sources or better hunting grounds, but also risk greater danger. The fearful survived by avoiding unnecessary risks, but might miss important opportunities. This tension shaped human behavior into a finely tuned survival machine, vigilant, cautious, but endlessly adaptive. Even today, much of our instinctual fear of snakes, spiders, heights, or strangers traces back to these ancient survival pressures. And yet, despite the dangers, prehistoric people persisted. They adapted, cooperated, innovated, and found ways to thrive. The world was wild, unpredictable, and often deadly. But through social bonds, creative problem-solving, and shared knowledge, humans spread farther and farther across the planet. And as the fire burns low once again, your mind can rest, knowing that in the face of every danger, it was not strength alone that carried humanity forward, but the power to survive together. After hundreds of thousands of years of survival, tool-making, and cooperation, prehistoric humans were ready for their greatest journey, spreading across the planet. The story of human migration is one of endurance, discovery, and astonishing adaptability. It begins in Africa. All available genetic, fossil, and archaeological evidence points to Africa as the original home of Homo sapiens. Our species likely emerged somewhere between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago in eastern or southern Africa. For tens of thousands of years, humans lived entirely within the African continent, adapting to diverse landscapes, open savannas, dense forests, rivers and lakes, coastal shores, mountainous highlands. Then between 60,000 and 70,000 years ago, a small group of humans began to move outward, starting what is known as the Out of Africa migration. It is estimated that fewer than 1,000 individuals may have originally crossed out of Africa into new territories. From these few pioneers, every non-African human population alive today descends. Their route likely followed coastlines, where food was plentiful. Shellfish, fish, birds, and coastal plants provided reliable nourishment. Coastal migration allowed early humans to spread rapidly along shorelines of the Arabian Peninsula, India, and Southeast Asia. Archaeological sites in India show human presence as far back as 55,000 years ago. From there, humans quickly expanded across the vast continent of Asia. In some areas, they encountered new species of hominins, such as Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia, Denisovans in Central and Eastern Asia. Genetic evidence shows that Homo sapiens interbred with both of these species. Today, most modern humans carry small percentages of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA, silent traces of ancient encounters. By 45,000 to 50,000 years ago, humans reached Australia, one of the most astonishing migrations in human history. To arrive there, early humans had to cross multiple open water channels, even during Ice Age periods when sea levels were lower. This suggests early humans had already mastered some form of basic watercraft, possibly simple rafts or dugout canoes. Once in Australia, they adapted to entirely new environments, arid deserts, rainforests, and dangerous new predators such as giant reptiles, massive kangaroos, and flightless birds like Genyornis. Farther north, humans pushed into Central Asia and eventually Europe. By 45,000 years ago, small human groups began entering Ice Age Europe, a land of glaciers, tundra, mammoths, cave bears, and woolly rhinoceroses. Here, they coexisted with Neanderthals for several thousand years before becoming the dominant human species on the continent. Over the next 30,000 years, early humans continued expanding into northern Asia despite extreme cold, across frozen land bridges such as Beringia, connecting Siberia and North America during glacial periods. By roughly 15,000 years ago, humans had crossed into the Americas, likely following large herds of game across exposed land bridges and along coastal routes. Once in the Americas, they spread rapidly, reaching the southern tip of South America within just a few thousand years. Adapting to rainforests, mountains, and deserts, by 12,000 years ago, humans had colonized nearly every habitable landmass on Earth. The only major exception was the isolated Pacific Islands, which would not be fully settled for many more thousands of years. This enormous expansion shows not only how adaptable humans are, but how flexible their technologies became. Clothing adapted for cold, boats and rafts for water crossings, new tools for new animals and plants, increasingly sophisticated language and cooperation. At each new frontier, humans encountered entirely unfamiliar plants, animals, and climates. They modified their diets and tools accordingly, developing highly localized knowledge about the ecosystems they entered. Many new animals would also face extinction after human arrival, not necessarily through overhunting alone, but through a combination of climate change and human pressure. Giant sloths, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, marsupial lions. As the Ice Age ended, some of the migratory patterns shifted once again. Rising sea levels closed land bridges. Populations became more isolated. And eventually, in multiple locations around the world, humans began to settle permanently, giving rise to the next great revolution, the beginning of agriculture. But for hundreds of thousands of years before that moment, humanity lived as master travelers, crossing deserts, following rivers, chasing herds across frozen tundras, sailing across open waters. No other species spread so far, so quickly, into so many harsh, unpredictable landscapes. This enormous migration defines much of what made early humans unique. Not just their tools, or their strength, or even their brains alone, but their flexibility, their willingness to explore, to cooperate, to face the unknown, and survive. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived entirely by hunting and gathering. Every meal was found, not grown. Every day required movement, searching for new sources of food. But around 12,000 years ago, everything began to change. Humans took one of the most significant steps in their entire history. They began to farm. This moment, known as the Neolithic Revolution, would permanently reshape human life. But this revolution didn't happen overnight. It was the result of countless small discoveries, observations, and experiments over many generations. The earliest evidence of farming appears in the region we now call the Fertile Crescent, stretching across parts of modern-day Iraq, Syria, Israel, Palestine, Turkey, and Iran. Here, humans began to domesticate both plants and animals. Among the first plants were wheat, barley, lentils, peas, chickpeas, and the first domesticated animals included sheep, goats, pigs, later cattle. How did these changes begin? Early humans likely observed that some plants grew better than others when seeds fell in certain places, perhaps near their camps. Over time, they may have started planting seeds intentionally near rivers and streams where water and sunlight were reliable. Domestication of animals likely followed a similar pattern. Some wild species tolerated human presence better, were easier to handle, and bred successfully near camps. Over many generations, humans selectively bred animals for traits they desired: docility, smaller size, better meat or milk production. The dog was likely the first animal domesticated, possibly as early as 30,000 years ago, long before farming began. Dogs may have helped in hunting, guarding camps, and even cleaning up scraps. As farming spread, human society slowly shifted from fully nomadic bands to semi-permanent villages. With farming, food supplies could be grown, stored, and planned in advance. This allowed for larger populations. More children could survive. Groups no longer had to move constantly in search of food, though farming still required seasonal work and careful management. New tools emerged to support this new lifestyle. Polished stone axes for clearing forests, grinding stones for processing grains, simple plows pulled by animals, woven baskets and clay pots for storing seeds and food. The development of pottery around this time also marked a major innovation. Clay pots allowed for safer storage of surplus grains, protection from pests, and even boiling foods to improve nutrition. Early farming was not easy. It required constant labor: planting, weeding, watering, harvesting, protecting crops from animals, insects, and unpredictable weather. In some years, drought or floods could destroy entire harvests. Crop failures led to hunger, but when successful, farming could feed more people on smaller land areas than hunting and gathering alone. Farming also led to the development of new forms of social organization. With permanent settlements came property ownership, land, inheritance, social hierarchies, leadership roles. Some individuals accumulated more wealth or power by controlling land, surplus food, or labor. These early inequalities would lay the foundation for later social classes and eventually complex civilizations. Permanent villages required cooperation for irrigation, defense, and trade. The first long-distance trade networks began emerging as farming spread. Groups exchanged obsidian, shells, salt, and eventually metals like copper and gold. By around 9,000 years ago, farming was spreading into Europe, Asia, and Africa, each region domesticating its own plants and animals suited to local conditions. In East Asia, rice and millet became dominant crops. In the Americas, corn, maize, beans, and squash formed the famous Three Sisters agricultural system. In Africa, sorghum, yams, and African rice were cultivated. These regional farming systems allowed populations to grow rapidly. The first true villages emerged, with dozens or hundreds of people living together permanently. Some early settlements include Çatalhöyük in modern Turkey, founded over 9,000 years ago, Jericho in the Levant, possibly one of the world's oldest continually inhabited towns. These communities featured early architecture, stone buildings, and even defensive walls. With larger populations came specialization. Some individuals focused on farming, others crafted tools, some became traders, healers, or religious leaders. This division of labor allowed technological innovation to accelerate. Over time, farming created surplus food, more than was needed for immediate survival. Surplus food could be stored, traded, or redistributed by emerging leaders, creating early economic systems. The birth of agriculture marks one of the most significant turning points in all of human history. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity lived as mobile foragers, deeply tied to the rhythms of nature. Farming allowed for stability, but also introduced new challenges. Population pressures, diseases spreading in dense settlements, conflicts over land, environmental degradation from over-farming. Yet despite these challenges, farming became the foundation for everything that followed. Cities, governments, writing organized religion empires. In these first quiet fields of early farmers, under simple stone homes beside rivers and grasslands, humanity planted not only crops, but the seeds of civilization itself.